All right, folks, welcome back to Nadland Forum Podcast Daily. I'm Ruby Sturt and, yep, you guessed it, today's all about closing costs. And if you've ever saved up till your bank account tastes like ramen just to hit that down payment, only to discover closing costs waiting for you at the finish line, you are not alone. I always think of them like that dreaded surprise fee when you buy gig tickets, except this one can knock out thousands, not just your weekend plans.
And I'm Lior. It's great to be here. Ruby, you hit the nail on the head. Because closing costs are those extra expenses most investors forget about until boom, you're signing the paperwork. Let's break it down. Closing costs are all those fees and charges tied up in finalizing your real estate deal. They usually range between 2% and 5% of the purchase price, both for buyers and sometimes the seller too, depending on your agreement. And honestly, sometimes it feels like a hidden tax just for wanting to own property.
Exactly. And the thing is, closing costs are this umbrella, right? There's like loan origination fees, appraisals, inspections, title insurance, all these line items you think you sort of understand, but then it's easy to glaze over. I remember when my mate bought her first investment property, she literally brought a highlighter to settlement and still missed a couple of those sneaky fees.
You know, that reminds me. First property I bought in New York. Let's just say the closing sheet was longer than I expected. I mean, I knew about the major stuff, like the loan origination and the appraisal. But what got me? Title insurance. I saw it on there, thought, all right, title? Sure, that's important. But I never realized how much that one line could cost. Nobody explained the details. And honestly, that's when I learned the painful way how scrutinizing every item, like actually asking what each thing is covering, matters more than you might guess.
Yeah, and for investors, those details decide if your numbers stack up or if you're dipping into profits you thought you had. Most people focus on price and mortgage rate, but every one of these fees ticks away at your returns. Especially, foreign investors listening in, getting clear on this stuff is double important if you're not familiar with how it works in the US.
Exactly. Whether you're scanning your own sheet with a magnifying glass or you've got a good broker on your side, understanding that 2-5% range isn't just trivia, it's where deals can make or break. And that brings us to all those little pieces. Lender fees, third-party fees, which most people only really spot once the numbers are laid out. Let's get into what those actually look like, yeah? So the lender fees make up a big chunk right from the start. Most common are application fees, origination fees, underwriting, and that processing fee. These are the classic ones. But then third-party stuff jumps in. You've got your appraisals, property surveys, and of course, the one everyone loves to forget, pest inspections. It's like, oh yeah, you also have to prove the house isn't secretly run by termites.
That's so true. And what gets me is how some of these can be, well, more flexible than you think. I remember the first time I pushed back on an appraisal fee. I actually called around, asked for a few competitive quotes and brought them to the lender. Thought they'd laugh me off, but surprise, got the fee knocked down a fair bit. Sometimes you just have to be a tad annoying, nicely though.
Absolutely. Negotiating lender fees is probably the most overlooked tactic, but it can save you hundreds, sometimes more. You can compare lenders, just ask flat out, can you give me a credit or waive this fee? Some will, some won't, but you don't lose anything by asking. And then you got the sneaky stuff, rate lock fees, so-called junk fees, which are just creative admin charges thrown in for flavor. Always check the loan estimate line by line.
Exactly. And to your point, if you're in what we talked about a couple episodes back, that buyer's market we're seeing lately, you can even score some seller concessions, like actual credits from the seller that go straight to help cover your closing costs. It's rare in a super hot market, but now it's getting more common if you know how to negotiate it into your deal.
Yeah, And remember, some fees are fixed, some just feel fixed. If you see something on your disclosure that looks off, don't hesitate, ask, or even push back. And with all these third-party guys, title, survey, pest control, always check whether you really need everything listed. Sometimes old requirements sneak in just out of routine.
It's not just about lowering each line item. It's the cumulative effect that brings your closing costs down to what you actually budgeted for. And I say, if you're not sure, put it on the table. Worst they can do is say no, but often you'd be surprised by a, yeah, okay, or a credit.
Everything's negotiable until you sign. That's what I always say. And especially if you know your stuff and aren't afraid to have those conversations. The result can be thousands saved, or at least no nasty shocks at the end. Let's talk more about strategies that actually cut those costs. And the clever ways you can use things like credits or assistance programs. So here's where the fun starts. Active ways to lower your closing costs beyond just haggling line by line. First up, comparing lenders isn't just about sniffing out the best rate. Each one charges their own blend of fees. So treat those loan estimates like matchup cards, side by side. Then you've got seller credits, which, like we said, become more possible when there's more market leverage on the buyer's side. Plus, lots of people miss this. There are genuine assistance programs out there from local agencies, state grants, even some employer programs that help cover closing costs if you dig a bit.
And don't forget the classic ask your lender. Some have like down payment or closing cost assistance baked in for certain buyers, first-timers, certain professions, even investors in some cases. If you don't ask, you just don't get it. Classic invisible money problem. And on your point about seller credits, I had a client once who negotiated nearly 2% of the purchase price back, all packed into their closing costs. Talk about walking away happy.
And then there's the tax side, which is so easy to overlook if you're new to real estate. Certain closing costs may be tax deductible. Mortgage points, property taxes. That chunk you pay at closing often shows up as a deduction. But here's the catch. You have to keep super clear records. Every document, every closing disclosure, even receipts for stuff like improvements. I tried to wing it the first time I claimed mortgage points. And yeah, my accountant was not amused.
Yeah, and I mean, talk to an actual tax pro if you're out of your depth. I saw someone in a Facebook group last year using a 10-year-old spreadsheet to track closing costs. Good on them for trying, but the rules change and you want every deduction you can get. Especially if you're investing, it can tip a whole deal from average to actually worth the trouble.
Totally. I used a down payment assistance program once, and if I hadn't dug into the terms or checked how it affected my taxes, I'd have missed out big time. At the end of the day, maximizing your outcome is all about being deliberate. Shop around, double-check deductions, and always get proper advice when something's unclear, especially if you're investing long-term. The upside is worth the homework.
I love that, Lior. And honestly, if there's a takeaway, it's that closing costs aren't just some fee. They're each a little puzzle piece that, when you get it right, makes the whole investment way more solid. Don't be shy to ask, negotiate, or phone a pro. We'll keep digging into this stuff for you in future episodes, so stick around. All right, that's it from us for today. Cheers, Lior.
Thanks, Ruby. Always a pleasure. Appreciate everyone listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye, guys.